In the unit Connected, you learned a lot of new vocabulary and grammar, and you practiced your English a lot. In this unit, you practiced some words related to technology. You learned words like inbox, browser, privacy, and cloud, and you learned how to be safer and more productive on the internet. You also read a story about the evolution of the telephone. You learned a little bit about how the telephone was invented and the history of this wonderful technology. I definitely don't know what I would do without a telephone. In your first grammar lesson, you learned about the difference between subject and object pronouns and how we use each one in a sentence. In your second grammar lesson, you learned about reported speech, which we use to talk about or write about what someone else has said. In your first listening activity of the unit, you listened to some people talk about technologies that they cannot live without. I can't live without my smartphone. I don't know what I would do without it. You also listened to the history of radio and television, and you practiced big numbers and percentages. In your reading lesson, you learned a little bit about GPS navigation, including its history and why GPS is important. In your first writing lesson, we talked about extra pronouns that we don't need to use when we write a sentence. Then, in your second writing lesson, you learned how to write an essay about the pros and cons of having a smartphone. Maybe you can use your essay to convince your parents to buy you a smartphone. In your next listening and speaking lesson, you learned some new symbols that we use when we access a website or write an email. Finally, in your phonics lesson, we learned about homophones. Remember that homophones are words that sound the same but have completely different spellings and meanings. Now you're ready to do the review quiz and show what you know. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next unit.